Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. It's a brand new show. We've been going about 5 or 6 months now. We've had lots of interesting guests on my show. And tonight, another brilliant guest on my show. His name is Brad Olson. His Akito's presentation and interviews have enlightened audiences at Content in the Desert, UFO Mega conferences, the 5D events, dozens of radios, including Coast to Coast, Ground Zero, Fade to Black, television shows including Ancient Aliens, American Unearthed, Beyond Belief, Mysteries of the Outdoors. Can we please welcome Brad to the show? Hello there. Good evening, Brad. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Brad?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Right. I've introduced you to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about yourself for the show.
Well, hey, Bob. It's great to be back on the show. Thank you for having me on. We did an interview about 4 years ago. Boy, how time flies. Look at all that's changed in those 4 years. Yeah, so I travel a lot. I've been to Antarctica 5.5 years ago and speak at conferences. A lot of times I'll do my presentation about Antarctica. I'll be going to Sedona in 2 weeks and doing my Antarctica talk for the Sedona MUFON group, and then to Las Vegas in the middle of October for the big 5D alien event and Biomed Expo at the Alexa Resort. Go to my website, bradolson.com, for my conference schedule and a lot of projects that I'm involved with, including the How Weird Street Fair, which we just did last Saturday. It was a big hit in San Francisco, and I'm still in the Bay Area for some friends' 30th wedding anniversary party tonight. So that's me in a nutshell and what I'm up to these days.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a bit about Secrets of the Antarctica. What made you write that book?
Well, I'm currently writing that book, and the name might change to Antarctica Esoterica. Keep it kind of in my esoteric book series line, but it's a conference presentation. It's been turned into a number of videos. Some of the compilations get put together on TikTok and go viral. I've seen 100,000 views on some of them. It's just really crazy. But it just goes to show that there's so much interest in Antarctica. It is one of the great unknowns here on planet Earth. And I think I was one of the only researcher in this field who went down there to specifically look into some of these questions about what might be lurking under the ice. And while I didn't find what I was looking for, I did find out some other things that I was unexpecting.
How did the Germans get involved?
Geez, that question kind of broke up, Bob. I only got as far as how
Oh,
did the ...
how did the Germans get involved? Did you hear me then? How did the Germans get involved?
Shoot, I can't hear you.
Oh my God. Well, everything seems to be working here.
Try that again.
How did the Germans get involved at the Antarctica?
Some reason not seeming to work. The questions aren't coming over.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Yeah.
How did the Germans get
Let's try it
involved
again.
at the Antarctica?
Well, I didn't really get involved with any groups or anything per se, but what I did was go down there about 5.5 years ago and secured passage on a sailboat that went from Ushuaia to some of the islands off the Palmer Peninsula, and then we finally got a chance to step foot on terra firma, the continental landmass of Antarctica, as it projects out from the larger mass. So you know how on a map you've got southern tip of South America and the northern tip of the Palmer Peninsula. That's the area that we went to explore. And so it dispelled a lot of myths. For example, flat Earth. I could tell you and even show you pictures right here on my phone, the Antarctica landmass. And so people who believe in flat Earth do not believe that Antarctica is a continent. I'm here to say I've seen it with my own eyes. Step foot on it. Another misconception about Antarctica is that it's impossible to go to. And while I was in an area where a lot of tourist ships go, cruise ships out of Ushuaia, and also flights to go further inland to the Palmer Peninsula, it is an open continent. There was nobody there. In fact, it would be nearly impossible to enforce ships sailing through some of these straits and around the Palmer Peninsula. I'm sure there are areas that are off limits. In fact, one of the things I discovered when I was down there was that there was a big no-fly zone over one portion near the South Pole. And that's interesting because that is the presumed hole in the ice that Admiral Byrd discovered in the 1920s on the first flyover and subsequent flight during Operation High Jump, when he navigated a plane into the hole and was summoned to meet the master in a very high-tech civilization down there. This is according to his own diary that was republished by a stepson. So the point is, there's a lot of mysteries down there, Bob, and my presentation and upcoming book are just designed to let people know the real hard, cold facts about what's going on.
I'm going to say that as well. You know, what's underneath the Antarctica then? Is there cities there?
Are there what there?
Cities
Cities.
underneath.
Well, not in the sense that we would imagine a city. Well, according to Admiral Byrd in this diary, he did go to a large civilization. This is under the ice. This is disputed by some that think that it was just a fantasy, that he made it up, or whoever, maybe his stepson made it up. But what is reality is, on the surface, Antarctica is a very inhospitable place. And so right now we're kind of coming into the end of the winter season. There's only 1,000 people on the entire continent down there. So there's not really any opportunity for a city. What there are bases that are manned by people that stay over through the winter, skeleton crews. And then a lot of the other scientists will come on a seasonal basis from November until March. And that's also the tourist season. And a lot of tourists will either take a cruise ship or you can fly in and go to different locations. But most people travel by boat.
Did the Germans get involved after the war then, down there?
Yeah, they sure did. Yep, that was the New Schwabenland claim that they made on an area that is approximately right below South Africa. It's, if you look on a globe or a map of Antarctica, it's called Queen Maud Land. It was formerly claimed by Norway. Then the Germans took hold and created a base there called Point 211. And then after the war, it reverted to Queen Maud Land. But then the Antarctica Treaty, which was fully ratified in 1960, created an ecological reserve for the whole continent. So it's a little bit of a misconception that that bases are big and prospering down there. I think it would be known by the global community if one country was, say, testing weapons or doing things that are against the Antarctic Treaty, the other countries would rally behind them and say, well, you're breaking the treaty. And so it's kind of on a honor system that countries go along with it, because the distances are so vast that it would be hard to really monitor. But there are certain signatures, such as a nuclear bomb blast or radiation, or even mining efforts would leave a scar behind. So that's the kind of thing that would be alerting to other nations in breaking the treaty for Antarctica preservation.
Yeah, there's been some talk about pyramids in Antarctica.
Yeah, there have, and I am able to locate 3 locations to varying degrees of whether they're constructed by an intelligent hand or if they are perhaps just a natural rock formation called nunataks. I think that might be an Eskimo word for just an attractive mountain poking through the ice. But of course, there are no Eskimos. There were no humans living there in historic times. It was only first discovered in 1821 by whalers and sealers who had come down there seeking fortune.
Exactly. Yeah. There's lots of things about saying there could be forests and rain fossils and rainforest there below. Have you ever heard anything like that then?
Well, I didn't see any of that. There really isn't. It's 99% covered in ice, but it's in the fossil record. There is megafauna, megaflora. There are ways that you can determine that the climate had been very different. There are even some species of dinosaurs that had once lived there that were not found anywhere else. So it's a pretty unique habitat, or it had been before it became totally frozen over.
I suppose when you went there, I bet you think, what was you thinking before you went there then? What was your understanding about the Antarctica?
Well, that it was this land of mystery, a frozen continent. That has been correct. But I wanted to see if I could find some of the large craft that are rumored to be below the ice. Supposedly 3 motherships that have been known about since the 1970s that got the nickname Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. Wasn't able to go to any of those locations, but I think I've been able to locate one of them in Google Earth, and I do show that in my presentation. And it happens to be located in New Schwabenland, in the German claim. And it also has the telltale characteristics of being a seasonal base. So they'll go out there in the summer and they'll study this thing. And in 2013, they uncovered it from the ice. And you can see in the Wayback Machine, if you go to the Conan base coordinates, that they were working on this thing. They were uncovering it and excavating. So I think there is some credibility that there are some extraterrestrial artifacts in Antarctica.
That's what I thought as well, because there's been sightings for numerous generations about seeing they've got a base there, they live there. Lots of different stories, but until you see something yourself, you've been out there and you've had a recce around there, you'll know more than what I do.
Yeah, that's why I say going there and seeing it with your own eyes is quite the reveal. You get to basically experience what this forbidden continent, this ice continent, is really all about. And while it wasn't like we were going to see ruins of an ancient civilization, but we did see some ruins of old whaling stations, some of them destroyed by volcano action in Deception Island. The biggest, what I thought was the biggest impression was that the wildlife has no fear of humans. The wildlife is really very curious and will swim up to the boat. Penguins or seals and whales swam underneath our boat, and you just see them on land, and the penguins can go right up to them. They have no fear of humans. And
that says a lot, then,
cool.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
That says a lot if they're not frightened of humans.
Yeah.
There's stories about being seen unusual creatures.
Yeah, I can't say I had any of those sightings either, but I've heard the reports, especially in Lake Vostok. So the Russians have a base in eastern Antarctica called the Vostok Station, and it's right above a giant freshwater lake. And in 2012, they started drilling 2 miles through the core to get down to this freshwater lake that never freezes, to find out that it's heated with geothermal activity.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and the other thing that I talk about in my presentation, just to give people perspective, is that Antarctica is the most volcanically active continent in the world. There are 93 known volcanoes, and the propensity for the geothermal heating to create domes under the ice, as well as what might be living in this Lake Vostok. And it's a huge lake. It's about the size of Lake Ontario, one of the Great Lakes.
Oh my God,
And
that is big.
yeah, it's in the top 10 largest freshwater lakes in the world, and hardly anybody knows about it. And we don't really know even what lives in it. But there are these stories that the Russians went down there with scuba equipment and encountered some kind of squid-like creature, and there may have been a loss of life as well. But because it's so far away, and because it's so mysterious and so few people can go there to verify, it's kind of like Mars. You could say, oh, there are these pyramids in the Sidonia region of Mars, and while you can see pictures of them, satellite images, it's very hard to verify if they were made by intelligent hands, because you can't go to Mars. Just in the same way, it's very difficult to go to Antarctica. So you just got to say it's speculation, and this is some of the rumors that we heard coming out of there, and I guess just leave it at that.
Yeah. What about this singing ice? As though there's a noise.
Yeah, well, that's just kind of a symptom of ice shifting around. Ice is really water in slow motion. So these glaciers will come down from the Transantarctic Mountain and go into the ice shelves, and then the ice shelves will eventually calve and break off. And while the ice is moving around, it sometimes creates these squeaking sounds. And of course, when they break off, that's quite a sight to see. We got a chance to see a big glacier. The word is calving, breaking off, and you see it first, and then you hear it like a big, loud, thunderous crashing sound, and it hits the water and creates a big splash. And then you see the waves start coming out.
Oh God.
And so we had to right our boat to take on the waves head on and just rode through them like that. But it would be able to capsize a boat if it hit it on the side. So you can't get too close to those glaciers, even though we did take our Zodiac up to collect some blue ice and put it in our drinks.
I was going to say, because you wouldn't last long in the water.
Nope. Hypothermia within minutes.
Is in the Antarctic, has anybody found any bodies or anything out there from hundreds of thousands of years ago?
No, because nobody ever lived out there. The most mysterious body that was ever found was a Native American woman, but she had been captured by a whaling boat and then died in Antarctica, and they left the body there. But she was probably just a sex slave or something. But no traces of civilization from humans. I know there's pictures that come out, but we live in the age of AI, so you can create images with some of these AI programs, and it's getting very difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff. And I do research in giants too, and so this whole slew of new images of giants is emerging, and nobody's ever seen them before, and they try to make them look like old-time images. Well, if they're old-time images, meaning they've been around for 100 years or longer, you'd think they would have emerged sooner than the AI image. And then sometimes they're in motion, they're like a video, and that technology just didn't exist that clear. So
I've seen that as well,
where these deep fakes,
where they're showing Bigfoot, enormous, about 12 foot, 14 foot high, besides these small people. And I think, where's them come from? Where's them photos come from now? Man-made.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think the Patterson video is probably the best, because they have been analyzing that video for many years, and it only shows more details through enhancements than a guy in a gorilla suit. You can see the tendons flexing.
Yeah.
She has breasts, female. You can see the breasts jiggling around. You can see the facial expressions when she turns her head towards the camera for a couple frames. So, yeah, I think Bigfoot exists, but again, the propensity for these deep fakes, and we're probably only going to continue to see more and more of them. They like to fool. When I say they, who is it? Maybe DARPA or intelligence agencies, or maybe just people playing a prank just to get people to believe UFO videos or Bigfoot videos or anything else, just to try to get truth seekers off the track and call something real when it's really a fake.
Do you think, I know you've been to Antarctica, do you think you'll go back again? Do you think we'll find out anything more what's happening down there?
Yeah, well, that's the big mystery, is what's going on down there. And I've been approached by a venture capital company who would like to send me back down there with a film crew. And I know the locations to go if we're able to go to some of these pyramid sites, to some of these motherships under the ice, to some of the Beardmore Glacier where there's supposed to be some also UFOs under the ice. I mean, it could be world changing. And the company is called VC Cross, Venture Capital Cross, but vccross.com is a website. And I'm going to bring in a couple of my colleagues, Linda Moulton Howe and Michael Sala, also Antarctica researchers. And we're going to try to put together a documentary about it. So yeah, I would go back down there, but it would have to be with a film crew and for a really good reason to go. It's very hard travel. In fact, it's by far the hardest trip I've ever taken. I've been to all 7 continents now in Antarctica, but talk about barrier of entry. It's hard to get.
Does there any Eskimos live down there?
No. Eskimos are only in the northern hemisphere. Polar bears and walruses also only in the Arctic, whereas penguins are only in the southern hemisphere.
Right. But, you learn something every day.
Yeah. It's interesting, though. The penguins have quite a long reach. They're not just confined to Antarctica. You can see them in southern South America, South Africa, even islands off of New Zealand and Australia. But they never quite made it up over the equator.
I wonder why. Why is that?
Probably too warm. They're cold water birds.
Right. Very interesting. Is the mountains in Antarctica then?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Big ones. The tallest is called Vinson Massif, and it's about 14,600 feet, about as tall as our highest mountains in the lower 48, like Mount Whitney or Mount Shasta. 54 mountains in Colorado are over 14,000 feet. So it's a big mountain, not as big as Mount McKinley or Mount Everest, of course, or some of the mountains in the Himalayas. But a lot of people that climb the tallest mountain in each continent, they want to round it out and go down to Antarctica and climb Vinson Massif. So there's a tour company that takes people down there every year, and a lot of them are to do the mountain climbing. But we're going to approach them about doing our trip to film at some of these locations.
Right. There's a question from Rebecca King. Can you tell us a little bit about how Weird Street fare? Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking, Rebecca. Well, I was the founder, and I'm still a co-producer of the How Weird Street Fair in San Francisco, California. We just did our 25th annual event last Saturday, and it was a big hit. It was great weather and also really fun day of people dancing out in the streets. Oh, it's mostly electronic music and DJs, but there are performers and a lot of people dress up and wear costumes. So it's a real fun, festive day.
Going back to the Antarctica, is a thing called Blood Falls.
Yeah, the Blood Falls. So it is a mystery. It's kind of unique because it's coming out a crimson red color. It's not flowing per se, but it's more of a stain on the snow. And it took a while for everybody to come to a consensus that it was really just minerals that are leaching out of the ground that are interacting with the snow and leaving that blood colored stain. It's in the area of the dry valleys, which is the driest location on Earth. It is not too far from McMurdo, but it hasn't rained or snowed there in millions of years. It's so dry. In fact, they practice the lunar rover or Mars landings in this area because it's similar inhospitable climate to those locations.
And I was going to ask you about the Antarctica. Is the fish breeding there then?
Oh yeah. See, that's the thing. Underneath the water surface, it's a very teeming ecosystem, very rich in life. Not only krill, which the whales like to eat, but there are these fish called the ice fish, which can live and populate and thrive in sub-freezing water. In fact, they lay their eggs and create these nests underneath the ice sheets, and they are one of the keystone species for the penguins and the seals that eat them. But they're very unique because they're almost translucent, and they have no hemoglobin. They have their bodies create kind of an antifreeze, so they're able to survive in such cold climates. And they're everywhere. They're quite prolific. Related to halibut. I met one of the scientists that was studying them, and I talk about it in my presentation. It was quite interesting that they've adapted to this inhospitable environment. And without them, there would really be no sea mammals or penguins, because they're very, very reliant on them as a food source.
Tell us a little bit about the Ross ice shelf.
Well, the Ross ice shelves, like the other ice shelves, it's when the glaciers come off the continent, they connect to this big ice sheet and slowly push out towards the ocean. When in the summer months, those big chunks from the ice shelves break off, and then they float north and eventually melt. So when we were sailing down there in late January 2018, I'm sorry, it would have been 2019 already. It was a year of COVID. Boy, couldn't have guessed what would have happened that year after we got back. But the very first thing we saw were one of these massive chunks that broke off from the ice shelf, and I could say it was from an ice shelf because the top of it was perfectly flat. And yeah, I mean, you could land a plane on it. It was so big, about 30 stories tall. And we all know that most of the mass of an iceberg is below the surface.
Yes, they say so as well. Yeah. You know, when you were out there, did you see any UFOs in the sky or anything unusual while you were out there?
Well, I was looking, but I didn't see any with my own eyes. But when we got to an Argentinian base called Brown, I would ask the personnel if they had ever had any paranormal or UFO experiences. And this particular base, they didn't want to tell me at first, but I got it out of them that a few weeks prior at another Argentinian base called Belgrano 2, they did have a sighting, UFOs or orbs flying over the Belgrano 2 base, and that subsequently they told the personnel at the other base what they had seen.
There's, you know, I know it's a cold place out there. Do submarines go underwater under the Antarctic?
Well, I'm sure they have Navy SEALs, but the part of the Antarctica Treaty is that it is not to be militarized. So you can't test ordnance there, you can't train there, and you can't do anything of a military nature except aid support to your country's research stations. So, for example, we went to the Palmer base, which is an American base, and they had a particularly cold summer, and the bay froze up. So they had a military icebreaker ship bring in supplies. They've also had emergency evacuation, and the closest helicopter that could come was a military helicopter. So you can use the military if it's for peaceful purposes, but part of the Antarctica Treaty is saying that no country can test ordinances or do that kind of training. So it wouldn't be like the Navy SEALs, oh, we're all going down to Antarctica and do underwater explosive training. You're not allowed to do that.
How many bases are out there then? How many countries use it?
Well, I think there's 54 countries that have some kind of presence down there. It may only be a seasonal base where half a dozen people come every summer, or other countries like America have multiple bases, and some are larger than others. So, for example, the McMurdo base is the largest base down there. That would be about the closest you could get to a city. But right now, it's just a skeleton crew of people that are staying over. I have a friend that goes there that works every summer, and he's here right now. In fact, he just got back from Burning Man, and he was at How Weird Street Fair, and I didn't get a chance to meet up with him, but I'm wondering if he's heading back down in the season, which will be in November.
Yeah, it must be lonely when you're down there for so long. How big are these places? What they're staying then?
Oh, they're small. I mean, everything is compact when space and heated space is a real commodity. So we were always on our boat, but we did see some of the quarters. It's usually like a college dormitory, 2 or 3 people per room, sometimes bunk beds. But then they'll have community rooms, and a lot of the research stations weren't able to keep people coming back. The main complaint was they didn't like the food. So a lot of the research stations have hired professional chefs to come down and make meals. So when we got to the first base we went to, which is called Arktowski on King George Island, we brought them fresh vegetables and fruit, to which they were very grateful and welcomed us in. And we got to take a shower and have some meals with them, and also, yeah, and then have some drinks. And that's when they broke out the blue ice. Thought, oh, that's kind of unique. What's that? Said when ice is compressed and becomes old, it turns blue. So we put it in our drinks, and when he put some mixers in the drink, it started popping like popcorn. So then we took the opportunity to go collect our own blue ice and just chopped it off of the side of a ice shelf and had our own popcorn popping ice.
How cold does it get when you're down there?
Well, it's cold. We're certainly in our winter clothes most days, but there were a few days when it warmed up and the sun came out. And this particular day we were going ashore to see a penguin colony, and then me and another American guy, we stripped down and jumped in and did the polar plunge. Jumped in the water. Oh yeah, it was freezing. Just enough to dip the head under the water and then come out. Say you did it.
It's like going into a plunge pool.
Yeah.
A cold plunge pool after a sauna.
Yeah, we did that too at the Verdansk base, the Ukrainian base. They also had a sauna And then after the sauna, run down and do a polar plunge. Go run back up into the sauna.
I suppose I suppose it's a bit secret when you're down there and talking to these bases. Did they ever say anything about UFOs being seen?
Well, only at that one Argentinian base. That was the only report that I got. It's not to say it doesn't happen, but a lot of the people down there are pretty isolated, and they're just working on their little compartment, say studying ice fish, and that's all they do. That's what they're there for. And so they're not really researchers in the field like I was, going to several locations and then inquiring about what people may or may not have seen down there.
What's your theory about Antarctica with this big hole what you can fly into, where a plane had flown in and saw cities underneath?
Yeah, well, I'm of the belief that there is a massive hole near the South Pole, because it wasn't just Admiral Byrd's diary, but it was some of Linda Moulton Howe's whistleblowers, and a guy named Brian S., who had to do an emergency evacuation, and they defied the orders of avoiding the no-fly zone and then float over it because it was somebody's life was on the line, and they saw it. And perhaps that's why the no-fly zone is there, to protect other pilots and passengers from seeing it. You know, they used to do flights from New Zealand that would just go out to Mount Erebus and around the McMurdo area and fly back on the same day. And right when they started doing these charter flights, one of the planes crashed into Mount Erebus, and they have suspended all passenger travel since.
So it's really a banned zone then, isn't it? No fly zone.
Yeah, no fly zone. But what's interesting is that there really are no flights even going over it or near it. So why do you have to enforce a no fly zone?
Yeah, it just makes you wonder what the government know more, what's happening out there.
Exactly. Yeah. So
especially American,
I think the jury is still out whether there is or is not a giant hole under the ice. And of course, if we could go to the South Pole, I don't think they'll let us fly over it, of course, but maybe we can conduct some interviews and see if anybody's willing to spill the beans.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I'm sure next time you go out, you'd be wanting to get some more information.
Yeah, well, that's what it's all about. Just uncovering these great mysteries in the world. And that's why I go back there to try to film that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I know we briefly talked about Bigfoot. What's your theory on Bigfoot? What is it? Is it in an interdimensional creature?
Yeah, I would agree with that, Bob. I think the reason it evades capture or being shot and killed, although there are some artifacts around the world of Bigfoot. In my book, Future Esoteric, I have a chapter on cryptozoology, which are all the creatures below the threshold of zoological study, hence the name cryptozoology. And I have images of a monastery in Bhutan, which is in the Himalaya region. And they have the top of a skull of a Bigfoot. And it's kind of pointed. And other images have shown giant hands, which are not gorilla, not human. But a full body intact Bigfoot has yet to be uncovered. And so I think they just have a fear of humans, and then they can also detect us when we're around, and they'll they'll break trees and they'll drop boulders, not to kill people, but just to scare us away. But I think they do have some kind of interdimensional abilities. You may have identified it right there, because every time a hunter gets near, they disappear. Never kill or capture one.
That's true. But I know myself, if I saw a UFO in the sky, you're enthralled in it, looking at it, but you don't think about getting your camera out. You might have your camera with you. I think, well, I'll get a photo sometime, but just because you're enthralled by looking at something, by the time you get your camera to do it, it's gone.
Yeah. Same thing here.
And yeah. And what about werewolves?
Well, you're the one in England, Bob. Maybe you should tell us about the Londons of where the werewolves of London, like the Warren Zevon song or the movie. Yeah, well, this is also in the category of cryptozoology. A similar kind of creature is called the Chupacabra. They're pretty common in the Caribbean and Central American countries, and some of them have been captured and killed, and there's some pretty compelling videos of these creatures. They're really unlike any other kind of mammal. So every once in a while, they'll pull up a fish or some kind of deep sea creature that has been thought to have been extinct for millions of years, and they're still alive. So I think there's still a lot of mysteries, especially at the bottom of the ocean. And I say this in my lectures, that the real big mysteries around the world are under the ice in Antarctica and the deepest depths of the oceans.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because there's more water and land, isn't there, around the world? So there's got to be some sort of bases everywhere, in every water.
Right. And then you have the whole idea of unidentified submersible objects, or USOs, that are UFO crafts that are able to navigate the depths of the ocean just as easily as they can fly through the air. So that too is another field of investigation that maybe gets overlooked.
I agree with that. We've seen a few things come out of water and go into water around this area in North Yorkshire. And we've always thought there's a base out there somewhere. I know the fishermen, there's a zone out there, not far away out, where they're not allowed to go into that area.
Yeah.
Being told, well away from it.
You know, another thing I bring up in my talk on Antarctica, and I'll show pictures of the southern Pacific Ocean, because when you look at the Earth from that perspective, and New Zealand's over here, and then just the whole west coast of South America and North America are barely visible. The whole globe is water. And we really live on an ocean planet. 71% of the surface of Earth is covered with water. So the depths and the vast distances could still hold quite a few secrets.
I'm sure there's going to be more mysteries come out in the future when we get more technology.
Oh, yeah.
To listen to things out there. And I'm sure we will. Like you say, they've gone into rainforests and found creatures what they never thought they existed.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
It's like the thylacine, I think, in Australia. There's loads of people seeing it again. What's supposed to be exist, gone. And I'm sure they will find that again.
Yeah, no kidding. All these mysteries just continue to get uncovered.
But do I think it's exciting to find something unusual, what had never been seen before?
Right. Yeah,
and
well,
I'm sure when you go back out again, out to the Antarctica, it'll be, how long does it take you to get there?
oh, it took us 72 hours, so just under 4 days going
Oh my
down
God.
there with the wind in a sailboat. But it took us 6 days to come back. However, we had a vote on the boat to take an extra day. It would have only taken 5 days to get back, but we took a vote on the boat, which is the very bottom of America, and it's a pyramid shaped rock. Many shipwrecks down there, but it's also a change in time zones, but also it's the meeting of the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. And that's why the Drake Channel that we had to sail through and got violently ill, got very seasick on the way down there.
Oh God.
It's considered the
Is
roughest
that,
seas of the world.
I'm going to say, is it two seas meeting together then?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I lost about 25 pounds on that trip just because I couldn't
Oh
eat for
God.
several days and
Horrendous.
throwing up the whole way down there. Yeah, it
I
was
bet you
pretty
thought,
awful. But once we were
I,
there, it was okay.
I bet you thought, why am I doing this when I'm
Yeah,
feeling
there was
rough?
crossed my mind.
But I
Yeah,
suppose once you get over it, you think it's worthwhile going there, isn't it?
that's right. Yeah, once you're there, then you're in the channels. There's islands off of the Palmer Peninsula that create calm water channels. And then we were fine. And then took our Dramamine a day before heading back on the Drake Passage and didn't throw up on the way back.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. I can imagine so. Good golly. What else you looking into this last year then? What else you been looking into?
Yeah, well, I'm working on two books right now. One is, as I mentioned, Esoteric Antarctica, and that should be out next year. But I'm also doing the research on my 12th book, which is underwater archaeology. And this is something I'm very interested in too, as a scuba diver and world traveler, and understanding that a lot of these archaeological sites underwater absolutely proved that there had been high civilizations on this planet that are a lot older than anything we might have learned in history.
What about Atlantis?
Yeah, I've got a whole chapter on Atlantis. And it's not just a singular location, it's many locations, from the Mediterranean Sea to the Pillars of Hercules, where Plato and his teacher Solon said that it was beyond Straits of Gibraltar, but also in the Caribbean. In fact, some of the best underwater archaeology is in the Caribbean Ocean, from these crystal pyramids near the Bahamas. You got the underwater road off the shores of Germany, and then discovered
Frozen.
uh,
You're frozen.
oh, how's it
You're
now?
back together. We're all right. We're back. Yes. I think we're back together again.
Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that.
I don't. And that's what happens anyway. Yeah. So you're looking into that. So where do you think Atlantis is then?
Well, as I said, probably the Mediterranean, the Atlantic Ocean, and then the Caribbean as well. That Atlantis was no singular location, but had colonies or establishments, other places around the world. It was a very high-tech civilization, so whether they were able to use flying machines or very advanced boats, but they were definitely a seafaring nation. And I've even looked into that location in Mauritius, just south of Morocco, called the Eye of the Sahara, the Ricat structure. But and it's perfectly round. It was discovered by the astronauts in orbit
Oh, God,
around the
yeah.
Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ricat structure, Mauritania. And while I have not been there, would like to go to investigate it, but I've seen videos and people drive around it. It's a big, vast area, and people think, well, there's Atlantis, because Atlantis was supposed to be a ringed city,
That's
and this
right.
has several rings to it, but it just appears to be a volcanic aftermath, because people driving around have never found a single artifact there. And if you think a whole city, which is up on the land now, you'd think one pillar would exist or one pottery shard or
Yeah.
something, but nothing's ever been found there. So I was on a panel with Graham Hancock at Contacting the Desert a year and a half ago, and somebody asked us about the Ricart structure, and both Graham Hancock and I commented, and he agreed that it's just a natural formation.
Yeah. It looks good when you see it at the
Yeah,
beginning,
yeah, it's
but
certainly mysterious. I've poured over Google Earth many times trying to find some kind of evidence for some civilization being there, but it's not existent.
so when's your next conference? Where are you going to?
Well, I'm heading to Sedona, Arizona on October 13th. I'm speaking at MUFON Sedona, doing my Hidden Anomalies of Antarctica talk. And then the very couple days later, I got to be in Las Vegas for the 5D Alien event and Biomed Expo. It's a double conference for 4 days. And I think I'm going to do my Antarctica talk there and another presentation. I'm also a panel moderator, so I'll be speaking a couple different times at that one. Then it kind of wraps up for the winter. They don't really do too many conferences in the winter, because then you got Christmas and New Year's coming up. But I
Yeah.
start up again in February in Florida, and another one in Florida in July, and a couple others that was told I'll be asked back to speak at, including Contacting the Desert at the end of May next year.
Where can people find you, and where can they get your books?
Yeah, you can check out cccpublishing.com. That's 3C's publishing, one word. And that's where my book publishing website is. If you order any one of my books off that website, they come through my office, so I'm able to sign copies for people. And if you want to know more about what I'm up to, some of my projects or my conference schedule, you can go to bradolsen.com. Same way my name is spelled, BRADOLSEN.com.
And do you do a podcast as well?
Yeah, I did have a show before I went to South America and Antarctica. I just haven't started it up yet. I bought a 10-acre ranch about 2 years ago, and I'm still getting that set up. So once I have an
What?
office and a space that I can do it regularly, and if I'm around enough, see, I travel so much
I know
that
you
I've got
do.
a infrastructure for a ranch. I could have animals there, barn and animal sheds and corrals, but I'm just not there mostly alone. So unless I had a
Yeah.
caretaker, I wouldn't be able to have any
Yeah.
animals or pets.
Do you ever come to the UK then?
Oh, I've been a few times. Haven't been for a while though. I'd love to speak at a conference there. You guys have a lot of great conferences.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Yeah. I've been to quite a few of them as well. So,
Oh,
yeah,
throw my name in the hat.
I will do. I
I'll have
will
me
do.
come out. Love to come to the UK
Yeah,
again.
I will do. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show after 4 years. God, I won't leave it too long this next time. I know you'll be going back out to the Antarctica again. So good luck to you, and I hope you find what you're looking for.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. It was great to connect with you again, and thank you for having me on the show. It was a great time.
Thank you. And hopefully I'll see you in the other side.